They said it was a routine transport mission. Simple extraction, no combat zone, no threat. Just a medical ship, clean and white, with giant red crosses painted across its hull like a damn target. No weapons, no shields, just a crew of doctors, nurses, wounded soldiers, and a handful of unarmed guards. It was supposed to be safe. It wasn't. Commander Reed Matheson didn't hear the screams. He felt them. He was in orbit, assigned to patrol duty on the TSS Vigil, a Corvette-class escort ship that was never requested because the diplomatic accords claimed no one would dare target a hospital ship. Cowards always hid behind laws they never planned to obey. That night, if you could call it night in space, they picked up the distress signal. Broken, static-laced, but real. One word repeated over and over, "Under attack, under attack, under attack." The call came from the Nightingale, Earth's largest off-world trauma vessel. It was 20 clicks from a jump point, so close to home. By the time the Vigil arrived, there was nothing but wreckage. Charred hull, floating limbs, medical beds spinning silently in zero-G, blood frozen in red globes, the kind of thing you can't unsee. Reed's fingers clenched the edge of his console as the feed came in. His men stood behind him in silence. Some looked away. One puked. They hit it with antimatter rounds. His weapons officer whispered. Reed didn't respond. He was staring at a floating body. A girl, maybe 8 years old, still in her hospital gown. Her eyes were open. He shut off the screen. 10 minutes later, he made the call. "Get me Earth Command, now." On Earth, the Council was still debating whether or not the incident qualified as an act of war. Reed didn't wait for their decision. He wasn't the only one. Across the galaxy, human ships began moving. Supply freighters refused to service alien ports. Independent Merc crews started taking bounty jobs with no payment, just names. And down on the colonies, recruitment centers saw their numbers triple in a single week. It wasn't about policy anymore, it was about blood, honor, payback. The official story claimed the attackers were Karnathi raiders, a fringe group, unaffiliated, deniable. Bullshit. Karnathi ships didn't have military-grade antimatter torpedoes. They didn't have stealth drive. They didn't have the gall to strike a Red Cross vessel in human space. Reed knew who really ordered the hit. Everyone in the fleet knew. The Virex Consortium. One of the oldest alien coalitions, wrapped in treaties, soaked in credits, smug behind their diplomacy and influence. They'd been bleeding Earth for years, economically, politically. But now they bled something else. That girl's face haunted him. 3 days after the attack, Reed stood in front of Admiral Horn in the war room at Europa Command. "You're not cleared to deploy retaliation," Horn said. "Earth is still discussing the diplomatic ramifications." "Sir," Reed interrupted, "they killed our medics, our wounded, our children. There are no ramifications. There is only war." Horn stared at him for a long time. Then he handed Reed a classified file. "Don't say anything. Don't broadcast it. You didn't get this from me. But if you go rogue, don't fail." Inside the file was everything Reed needed. Locations, names, ship layouts, and Virex fleet deployment paths. Earth couldn't declare war, but someone had to start one. The stars used to be cold, empty, silent. Now they burned with fire and hate. Reed's ship, the Vindicator, wasn't a warship. It was a repurposed mining hauler refitted for combat. Heavy plating, improvised cannons, a stolen Virex cloaking module bolted onto the hull with Earth-made parts. He didn't need a fleet. He didn't need orders. What he needed was vengeance, and he wasn't alone. By the time they launched the assault on the Virex waystation Sigma-7, there were 12 ships at his side. No flags, no official insignia, just humans with scores to settle. When the first Virex station exploded into a fireball of broken steel and alien corpses, Earth felt it. No more negotiations, no more treaties. Just one message transmitted on every known channel in every dialect of the Virex tongue. You touched our wounded. Now we'll touch your gods. The retaliation wasn't just a mission. It became a movement. By the time Reed's assault on Waystation Sigma-7 made the galactic networks, Earth's population was already polarized. But something had shifted. Even the soft-spoken diplomats who once preached tolerance fell silent when footage leaked from the wreck of the Nightingale. No one could explain away charred children floating in vacuum. Reed sat alone in the command bay of the Vindicator, watching the clip again, frame by frame. He wasn't torturing himself. He was memorizing every face, every innocent lost. That pain fueled him now. Sleep had become a stranger. Behind him, footsteps approached. "You need to see this," his first officer, Logan Creed, said, tossing a data tablet onto the table. Reed opened the file. It was a message intercepted from the Virex Council. Unsecured, too careless for a government that was supposedly clean. It was an internal briefing. Reed scrolled through lines of Virex script translated into English. Human retaliation has begun. Expected escalation. Minimize public exposure. Leverage media partners to label Earth's response as terrorism. He froze. Terrorism. They murdered a hospital ship, and now Earth was to be painted as the aggressor? Rage twisted in his chest like a knife. "We hit a fuel depot on Delva 4 last night," Creed said. "No military personnel. Civilians only. 30 dead." Reed looked up sharply. "Why the hell would we—" "They were feeding Virex supply lines," Creed said. "Voluntarily. Paid handsomely for it. That wasn't the mission." "You want this to be clean, Commander. You picked the wrong war. Virex doesn't keep their hands clean. Neither should we." Reed stared at him. Creed's eyes didn't flinch. That was the moment something inside Reed cracked. Not a break, but a shift. This wasn't a surgical operation anymore. It was a blaze, a purge. 3 weeks in, and Earth hadn't officially declared war. But it didn't matter. Human merc groups, pirate clans, exiled soldiers, even disgraced politicians, all of them started joining the cause. They called themselves the Scorchborn, a name born from what was left of the Nightingale. Scorched hulls and burned bodies. The Virex outposts were falling one by one, and the Virex weren't taking it well. In a desperate PR move, the consortium launched a broadcast across the neutral zones. A silver-skinned ambassador with glassy black eyes spoke directly to the galaxy. "The human species has broken interstellar law. They are violent, irrational, and emotionally unstable. Their obsession with revenge threatens peace across all systems." Reed watched it with a sick grin. "She's scared," he said. Creed chuckled. "She should be." The crew erupted in laughter. Morale was high, too high. Reed knew what that meant. Blood would be spilled soon, and not just alien. That night, a message came through a secured channel. Not from Earth Command. Not from any government. It was a woman's voice, steady, calm, and broken. "This is Dr. Amelia Kern, formerly of the Nightingale. I survived." Reed's blood ran cold. The transmission was short. Her pod had drifted through a debris cloud until a passing freighter rescued her. She'd been sedated, treated, and kept off-grid. She'd watched the galaxy spin itself into chaos in her name. "I'm not calling to stop you," she said. "I'm calling to tell you. I saw who pulled the trigger." She uploaded the footage. It wasn't Karnathi Raiders, it was Virex Legion Black Unit, Delta Protocol, the elite war division that officially didn't exist. They didn't disable the ship. They executed it. Every camera, every deck, targeted strikes. They knew the layout. They'd memorized where the wounded slept. The medbay was the first to go. Reed didn't speak for nearly 5 minutes. Creed finally whispered, "You still want to keep it clean?" Reed shook his head. "No." He looked up, fire in his eyes. "We make them bleed. Not just their soldiers, their symbols, their pride, their homeworlds. We don't just fight them, we ruin them." 1 hour later, a new operation was launched. Operation Ash Sermon. No more hit and runs, no more whispered retaliation. The mission was now total warfare, targeting everything that made the Virex proud. Their trading towers, their embassies, their leaders. Reed sent out a universal message on all open channels. "This is for the Nightingale. For every child who never made it home, Earth is no longer a peacekeeping world. We are a fire in the void, and you've just fed it." No one on the bridge clapped. No one smiled. They were long past that now. They were ghosts in steel. The first strike under Operation Ash Sermon wasn't surgical. It wasn't hidden. It was loud, brutal, and filmed from 6 different angles. The Tower of Virex Unity, located on the moon of Kralis 9, was a diplomatic fortress. 400 meters tall, marble white. The Virex used it as a symbol of their peaceful expansion. It also happened to house 3 Black Ops command terminals deep in its vaults, the same terminals used to coordinate the hit on the Nightingale. Reed didn't go for the terminals. He leveled the entire dam tower, detonation charges rigged to the foundation, coordinated orbital blasts, a controlled implosion that lit up the night sky of Kralis 9 like it was Judgment Day. The footage spread like wildfire. In the video you could hear a human voice over the explosion's echo. "Mercy is earned. You earned this instead." The Virex Council called it genocide. Reed called it justice. The fallout was instant. Virex systems went dark. Trade routes locked up. Dozens of smaller species under the consortium's protection started distancing themselves, either terrified of being next or quietly hoping Earth might do what no one else dared: break the Virex machine. Meanwhile, Earth was still silent. The Terran Council released a one-line statement: "We are investigating the unauthorized actions of rogue elements." But everyone knew Earth wasn't stopping Reed because Earth needed someone like him now. They just couldn't say it out loud. In the dark of his private quarters, Reed sat watching the broadcast from Dr. Kern again. He must have seen it 100 times, and still, every time he saw those black-armored Virex operatives fire into a recovery ward filled with sedated patients, something inside him twisted. He'd seen death before. He'd served in the border wars. He'd lost friends, lost sleep, lost parts of himself. But this was a level of calculated evil he'd never thought possible. They didn't just want to kill humans. They wanted to break their hope. He stared at the final frame. A young male nurse, hands raised, mouth open mid-plea. Shot twice. No hesitation, no mercy. Commander. Reed turned to see Logan Creed standing in the doorway, jaw tense. "We've got chatter. One of the consortium's high ministers, Thyrix Vund, is holed up on Keylor Prime, off-grid estate, private security, no military escort." Reed leaned forward. He was on the authorization committee for Delta Protocol, wasn't he? Creed nodded. Signed off 3 months before the Nightingale was hit. Covered his tracks. But Kern's data dug up the original logs. Reed stood. "We're not just hitting him, we're burying his legacy." The assault on Keylor Prime didn't go unnoticed. Virex stations intercepted scrambled signals, but no one responded fast enough. Reed's team came in low, silent, fast. 5 drop pods, 40 men. No warning. The estate was nothing like a military site. Lavish, peaceful. Vund was holding a private event. Dignitaries, family, staff. They didn't get the chance to scream. Reed didn't kill the staff. He didn't touch the children. But Thyrix Vund? He He was found face down in the reflecting pool, a data drive shoved into his mouth, and a message carved into the marble beneath. "This is for the nurses. This is for the medics. This is for every unarmed soul you left to burn." Some humans condemned the attack, others called it theater. But across Earth's colonies, especially among those who had buried loved ones from the Nightingale, the message was clear. This was war, not of borders, but of memory, of honor, of blood. Even Earth's military command began leaking support in shadow. Outposts started going dark and re-emerging as independent operators. Navy captains who lost comms returned as part of Reed's ever-growing fleet. The Scorchborn now numbered in the thousands. And the Virex? They were scared. The more they tried to condemn Reed, the more systems fell into silence. Fear spread across their outer colonies like rot. Then came the tipping point. A Virex diplomatic vessel was caught fleeing their capital with classified archives. Human raiders hijacked it mid-warp. Inside, evidence, documents, footage, communications, proving the hospital ship strike had been part of a long-term plan. Not an accident. Not even just revenge. A test. They wanted to measure Earth's emotional instability, to see how far humans could be provoked before lashing out. Virex called it the irrationality thesis. Reed read every page. He couldn't laugh. He couldn't scream. All he could do was whisper, "They thought we were animals." Creed stepped beside him. "So let's give them a nightmare they can never measure." The next target wasn't military. It wasn't political. It was sacred. The Virex conclave of ancients, a floating cathedral that served as the spiritual heart of their civilization. Untouched by war for over 3,000 years. Until now, the Virex conclave of ancients wasn't protected by shields. It didn't have orbital guns or planetary defense grids, because no one in all recorded galactic history had ever dared touch it. Built from black celestial stone mined off a dead moon, the conclave was a floating monument that drifted in a perfect gravity orbit above the Virex homeworld. It shimmered with ethereal lights and cathedral spires, its vast halls echoing ancient chants. The Virex believed it was the seat of divine knowledge, untouchable, eternal. To Reed, it was just another lie made out of marble and myth. They claimed humans were irrational. Then they were about to learn what righteous rage looked like when it took off the gloves. The operation wasn't discussed over comms. It wasn't written down. Just a quiet meeting on the bridge of the Vindicator with 6 ship captains and one plan. Burn their god. "No weapons?" one pilot asked. "No shields?" another added. Reed nodded. That's the point. The silence was heavier than steel. Creed, leaning against a pillar, folded his arms. "You sure you want to cross that line?" Reed looked him dead in the eye. They crossed it the second they shot unarmed children out of an airlock. No one argued after that. The fleet came in under stealth. 12 ships, riding just beneath the magnetic curtain of the Virex homeworld's solar drift. They positioned themselves above the conclave's gravity corridor, cloaked in silence, waiting. Each vessel was loaded with fusion-laced thermobaric fireglass, illegal in half the galaxy. The kind of stuff that didn't just blow things up, it erased them, turned history into powder. Reed watched the conclave hover below them through the viewport. It was beautiful, he had to admit. Centuries of architecture, carvings that predated Earth's first spaceflight, gold spirals and floating pylons gently orbiting its core structure like prayer wheels. And yet, it was still just a monument. Stone couldn't feel guilt, stone couldn't bleed, but symbols could die. He gave the order. The first blast shattered the upper spire. The second lit the entire structure with fire that burned a new color, white-blue, like the inside of a collapsing star. Within 42 seconds, the conclave was gone. Not broken, not damaged. Gone. Ash blew into the atmosphere, sacred relics, scrolls, bodies, all turned to dust. And humanity's voice followed seconds later, played across every open Virex channel, every frequency, every speaker. Reed's voice. You taught us peace was weakness. You mistook mercy for fear. You defiled our dead. So now we defile your gods. Then silence. The galaxy didn't know how to react. Some cheered, some mourned, some panicked. But everyone understood. Earth wasn't asking for a seat at the table anymore. Earth was flipping the damn table. Reed sat alone in his quarters that night, staring out the viewport. He didn't feel triumph, didn't feel pride. He just felt still. There was no going back now. No peace talks, no truce. Not after what they did to the Conclave. He picked up a small data chip from his desk. It was all that remained of a personal log from one of the nurses aboard the Nightingale, a young man named Arlen. Age 24. Served in trauma wards, specialized in pediatric care. Loved old Earth music. Hated coffee. His last message was to his mother. Reed had listened to it once, just once. He never could again. Creed stepped in without knocking. We've received a direct message from Virex Command. Reed didn't turn around. What do they want? They're offering surrender, conditional. Publicly they're denying it, but they're scared. Reed turned now. They offer peace now? Creed tossed the tablet on the table. They say if we stop, they'll pull every black unit team out of our sectors, apologize privately, compensate the families of the Nightingale. Reed stared at the screen for a long time. Then he said, No. Creed blinked. You're refusing? Reed stood up, fire in his eyes again. They want to pay for silence. I want them to bleed for justice. They die, or we die. That's the war they started. Across the galaxy, humans stood divided. Some begged for Reed to stop before Earth became a pariah among the stars. Others offered their ships, their weapons, their lives. The war was no longer about a hospital ship. It was about everything Earth had ever swallowed from the stars. The exploitation. The treaties with two meanings. The slow suffocation of human pride beneath alien rules. The quiet condescension from higher civilizations who saw humanity as animals with tools. No more. Now Earth spoke one language. Fire. In the shadows, the Virex prepared their counterstrike. They wouldn't try to negotiate again. They were planning something final, something that could end Reed, the Scorchborn, and any future human uprising in a single blow. But Reed wasn't done. He had one more message to deliver. And this time, it wouldn't be sent with words. They called it Project Last Dawn. Deep in a classified vault on the Virex homeworld, a final measure had been growing, developed over decades, meant to be used only if the human species ever posed an existential threat. Not military, not political. Existential. Reed Matheson had become that threat. So they activated it. Not through warships, not through fleets, through biogenesis. Dr. Kern, still hiding in an underground clinic on Earth's lunar colony, intercepted the fragments of a burst transmission. It was coded in a Virex strain of molecular glyph. Rare, but not impossible to decode with the right tools. She spent hours decrypting it, running sleepless, her hands trembling with every line she revealed. What she uncovered sent her vomiting into a trash bin. It wasn't a weapon, it was a virus, genetically tailored, human-specific. A biophage designed to spread invisibly, sit dormant for weeks, and activate once a certain gene pattern was triggered, specifically those linked to adrenaline surges. Rage, fear, combat. The virus would burn from the inside out. Death by one's own humanity. It was Reed they were trying to kill. But first, they'd kill everything that made him human. When the warning reached the Vindicator, the ship was docked on a refueling station in a gray zone, neutral territory. But neutral didn't mean safe. Within minutes, the station locked down. "Biocontainment breach in docking ring," the automated systems blared. Too late. 3 of Reed's men were already coughing blood. One collapsed mid-step. Another screamed as black veins spiderwebbed across his face. Creed slammed the emergency lockdown. "Seal medical bay. No one in, no one out." Reed stood frozen, watching his crew convulse. "It's not a bomb," he whispered. "It's a damn plague." Creed turned to him, furious. "They're targeting our DNA, Reed. This isn't war. This is a damn Holocaust." Reed clenched his fists, his nails drawing blood from his palms. "They can't beat us on the battlefield, so they try to erase us." The virus didn't spread far. Kern had sent instructions in time. The infected were contained, and the rest of the fleet enacted hard quarantines. But 12 crew were gone. 12 good men. One of them was barely 20, new to the fleet, eager and bright-eyed. Reed held the boy's dog tags in his hand for a long time. Then he spoke, not to Creed, not to his crew, but to the camera, broadcasting on every open human channel. "They've used bombs, lies, assassins. Now they use disease, like cowards. They don't want to defeat us. They want to wipe our kind from history. I say we carve our names into their bones instead." He didn't wait for orders. He wasn't the kind of man who did anymore. The Virex Bioresearch Hub on Sector Theta 9 was nestled in the shell of a hollow asteroid, hidden behind a defense grid. Thought untouchable, Reed's fleet jumped in without warning. They didn't fire to wound, they fired to purge. Torpedoes ripped through the outer shell, opening the labs to vacuum. You could see test chambers implode. Biocanisters flying into the void. Scientists clawing at the walls as the air fled their lungs. Some begged for mercy on the emergency channels. Reed didn't answer. By the time it was over, Theta 9 was a smoldering chunk of rock with nothing left but cinders. That should have broken the Virex. It didn't. Instead, they struck back in the most twisted way imaginable. A transmission came through 1 week later, unauthorized, untraceable. It was Therix Vund's daughter, alive, blooded, shackled, held at gunpoint in a dark room, the only light a dull blue glow from a wall projector. On the screen behind her was Dr. Amelia Kern, also alive, also captive. One of the Virex generals stepped into frame. He had no weapon, just a voice smooth as oil. "This is your fault, Commander Reed. You could have walked away. You could have taken their apologies. Now, we kill them to make you watch." Then a gunshot. Then static. Reed stood completely still. No anger, no screams, just silence. Everyone on the bridge waited for him to speak. He didn't. He just walked to the control panel, typed in the ship's jump coordinates, and locked the target. Virex Prime. No more raids. No more outposts. No more messages. It was time to end it. The final battle wasn't about strategy anymore. It wasn't about war or diplomacy or even vengeance. It was about extinction. Reed had no interest in survival. Not anymore. He wanted the Virex to feel the same hopelessness those medics felt aboard the Nightingale. He wanted them to watch their world fall the way that girl's body floated lifeless in space. The fleet mobilized. The Scorchborn gathered. The final war for the stars had begun, and at the center of it all was a single, furious human. The last commander Earth would ever need. The fleet emerged over Virex Prime like a storm that had been waiting its whole life to break. No stealth, no warning, no mercy. Reed Matheson stood at the helm of the Vindicator, eyes locked on the pale blue surface of the Virex homeworld below. It glittered in the starlight. Beautiful, cold, arrogant. That was about to change. "Orbital defenses are coming online," Creed reported. 12 platforms, 35 plasma batteries, full fleet signature approaching from their western hemisphere. Reed didn't blink. Send them, I'll reply. Creed didn't need to ask. A minute later, human torpedoes screamed toward the nearest defense ring. The impact was biblical. The explosion turned metal into vapor, sent Virex fighters spiraling through firestorms and debris. And that was just the beginning. Down below, panic exploded. Virex cities hadn't seen war in over 800 years. Their civilians didn't understand real fear. Their military hadn't fought a home defense campaign since their ancestors hunted each other with pulse blades. Now the sky was falling. Human ships descended like falling gods, scorchborn war cruisers black as night, refitted freighters with spiked hulls and stolen tech welded on like scars. Everywhere they went, they broadcast the same message. This is for the Nightingale. This is for every child you silenced. This is for every innocent you called a test subject. Earth remembers. The Scorchborn didn't just attack military targets. They hit communication towers, propaganda broadcasters, Virex cultural centers that had once distributed lies about humans being primal and unstable. Now the only instability was the ground cracking beneath Virex towers. Reed's orders were clear. No children. No unarmed. But no mercy for the system that built this war. He wasn't there to teach them a lesson. He was there to make an example. But the Virex weren't done yet. Their fleet finally reached orbit, sleek silver dreadnoughts shaped like spearheads, running with cold AI precision. They moved in perfect formation, descending like a blade meant to cleave Earth's fury in half. Enemy vessels locking on, Creed announced. Let them, Reed replied. The trap was already set. Hidden behind the fifth moon of Virex Prime, a second human fleet uncloaked. The Ghost Division. Old Earth warships, stolen enemy tech, orbital mines, every piece of vengeance Earth had forged in silence. They hit the Virex fleet from the rear, cutting through formation, tearing holes in the dreadnought line like thunder cracking ice. The Virex thought they were fighting rebels. Now they were bleeding to a people reborn. Inside the Vindicator, Reed moved with purpose, coordinating not just strikes but a broadcast. This one was special. He stood before a live camera feed, background blurred, face shadowed but unmistakable. You built an empire on control. You told yourselves we were animals. You murdered our wounded and called it strategy. This is not a rebellion. This is not an uprising. This is judgment, and I am its voice. The broadcast ran across every major system, human, Virex, neutral. Entire colonies fell silent to hear it. And in the Virex capital, just as the enemy government tried to jam the signal, Reed's message was seared into their mainframe with a virus written by a lunar hacker who once lost a brother on the Nightingale. It couldn't be turned off. Then the real strike began. The vault of the High Circle, the Virex Central Command Citadel, sat buried beneath their capital. A labyrinth of marble halls, AI command centers, and politicians who had never once stepped onto a battlefield. Reed didn't bomb it. He landed. Boots on the ground. He and Creed led the charge, flanked by Scorchborn infantry and ex-military Earthborn troops. The halls were empty at first, too quiet. Then the ambush came. Black-clad Virex elites, genetically modified guards bred for one job, protect the circle. The fighting was savage. Reed wasn't just a commander now. He was a soldier again, covered in sweat, blood. Some his, most not. Creed took a blast to the side, kept moving. Grenades tore through statues of Virex founders. Laser rounds carved into ancient ceilings. It was chaos, and Reed thrived in it. At the heart of the vault they found the circle, 7 of them, draped in robes, shaking behind a transparent shield. "Please," one stammered. "We're civilians. We were misled." Reed raised his rifle. You ordered the strike on a ship of children. The circle leader swallowed. We didn't think you'd retaliate like this. Reed stepped closer. That's the problem with your kind. You always think, you never listen. He lowered the rifle, turned his back. Creed frowned. That's it? Reed raised a hand. From behind them, a Scorchborn unit brought in something heavy. It was a stasis pod. Inside, Dr. Amelia Kern, alive, scarred, thin, but breathing. Reed looked back at the circle. I came for her. He turned away. Burn the rest! The vault erupted behind him as they climbed out into the surface again. Above, the sky was fire and smoke and broken pride. Virex Prime was crumbling, not because of bombs, because Earth had finally said, enough. The war wasn't over yet, but the tide had turned. Humanity had done the unthinkable, and now the galaxy was watching. Virex Prime burned for 3 days. The sky was a canvas of smoke and metal. Towers that once shimmered like beacons of order collapsed into black heaps. Statues of Virex philosophers, of unity, of galactic progress, all broken. The broadcasts fell silent. The council was gone. Their archives scattered, their command chain obliterated. And humanity didn't celebrate. They mourned, because what they lost to get here couldn't be reclaimed. The Vindicator hovered low over the ruins, its hull scorched, systems overworked, reactors humming like a wounded animal. Reed stood alone in the observation bay, helmet under his arm, watching the fires below. Creed limped in behind him. A bandage ran down the length of his ribs, and his right hand still shook slightly from nerve damage. They're calling it a victory, Creed said. Reed didn't answer. You're a damn hero, Commander. Statues of you are going up on half the colonies. Still nothing. Creed stepped beside him. You should be proud. I'm not. That landed like a stone between them. After everything, the children lost on the Nightingale, the Scorchborn's rise, the Virex blood spilled across the stars. Reed didn't feel glory. He felt hollow, because in that quiet after the storm, in that eerie stillness where no more shots were fired and no more screams echoed through comms, something darker crept in. Regret. Not for the mission, not for the justice, but for how far he'd had to go to get it. Dr. Amelia Kern was stable, alive, barely. The medics said she'd suffered months of psychological torment, solitary confinement, drugging, emotional degradation, but she hadn't broken. She asked to see Reed the moment she woke up. He hesitated for almost 2 days before agreeing. When he entered the med bay, she was sitting up, bruises fading, voice steady but soft. You didn't stop, she said. Reed nodded. I couldn't. I saw what they did. I don't blame you. She paused. But you're not the same man I remember. That one hurt, because she was right. Outside, the galaxy was changing. The fall of Virex shook the foundations of every major power. Treaties were being rewritten, new alliances formed, old rivalries reignited. And in the center of it all, Earth, not the peacekeeper, not the idealist, the avenger. Some human colonies celebrated Reed's war as the start of the new Terran Age. Statues, songs, a new anthem written on the ruins of silence. Others feared him. The ones who still clung to diplomacy whispered that Reed had unleashed something darker, made Earth dangerous. A rogue species with a thirst for blood and a commander who proved they'd burn anything that bled them. They weren't entirely wrong. In the shadows, resistance brewed. Virex wasn't fully dead. Pockets remained. Scattered warlords, loyalists, extremists who now saw Reed as the symbol of everything they feared. An unpredictable, primitive force. They began organizing, not for peace, not even for revenge, but for erasure. A new term spread across dark channels. Project Cleansing Ember. Not a single Earth soul would survive it. And at the center of that list was Reed Matheson. Meanwhile, the Vindicator limped back to Earth space. Docked near Mars Station Delta, the crew disembarked for the first time in months. Some went home, some never came back. Others signed on to other fleets, riding high on the legend of the Scorchborn. Reed didn't go planet-side. He stayed in orbit, surrounded by silence. The war was over, but the fight inside him wasn't. One night, if you could call artificial station time night, Reed sat in the command lounge, staring at an old holotape. It was a birthday message from a soldier who'd died in the Theta 9 biostrike. Just a kid. Bright eyes, nervous smile, telling his parents he'd be home soon. He wasn't, and Reed had sent him. Creed entered quietly, pulling up a chair without asking. "We made it back," he said. Reed looked at the flickering holo. "Did we?" They sat in silence for a while. Then Creed spoke again. "You know, you could step down, walk away. They'd still worship you." Reed shook his head. "I'm not done." "You mean revenge?" "No," Reed whispered. "I mean protection. There's a storm coming. I can feel it. And if they ever come back for us, someone needs to be the wall." Earth would rebuild. The stars would shift. But deep in the shadows of dead systems, Reed Matheson's name became something more than legend. It became a warning. 2 years later, the stars were quiet again. No warships patrolling civilian lanes, no distress signals lighting up the void. The galaxy, broken and reshaped by fire, had settled into something resembling peace. Fragile, shaky, but real. Humanity had taken its seat among the stars, not as equals, not as diplomats, but as survivors who refused to kneel. And Reed Matheson had vanished. Some said he retired to the Mars colonies. Others claimed he lived off-grid near Titan's frozen ridge. A few believed he was dead, burned out from the inside by the weight of everything he did. But the truth was worse. Reed lived aboard a ship no one tracked, the Emberwolf. Old Earth tech fused with stolen Virex engineering, running silent across the dark sectors where no one dared go. He wasn't hunting anymore. Not exactly. He was watching. Reports of scattered Virex retaliation groups had grown. Not armies, fanatics, insurgents. What remained of a once proud empire now twisted into a religious cult of vengeance. They didn't want justice. They wanted to cleanse humanity from the stars. They didn't care who had lived or died on the Nightingale. They didn't care about treaties or truths. They only cared about erasing Earth. And Reed? He was the only one who could stop them, because he understood what vengeance did to a man. One night, a black box transmission pinged the Emberwolf systems. Encrypted, Earth-based, Priority 0 clearance. Reed tapped it open. The face that appeared was older, hardened. Dr. Amelia Kern. She was no longer hiding in backroom clinics. She'd become Earth's lead advisor on off-world bio-threats, built new ethics protocols for war medicine, and helped form the first neutral spaceborne trauma fleet since the fall of the Nightingale. But her voice still held the same edge of sorrow. "Reed, I know you're still alive, and I know you think you're protecting us from out here, but the ghosts aren't out here anymore. They're back home. We have politicians building statues of you they don't even believe in, and children growing up thinking justice means fire. I'm asking you, come back, not as a weapon, as a warning." He didn't answer her, not right away. Instead, he looked out at the stars, the same way he did that night the Nightingale burned. They hadn't changed. Still cold, still silent. But something inside Reed had shifted. He wasn't angry anymore. He was tired. Tired of bleeding so humanity didn't have to. Tired of watching men younger than him repeat his path. Tired of the myth they'd built around him, a god of war carved out of flesh and guilt. He wasn't a god. He was just a man who had lost too much. That night the Ember Wolf turned its course, first toward Mars, then toward Earth. Not to lead, not to fight, but to remind the next generation what justice had cost. When Reed landed at Earth's orbit dock, no one expected him. There were no trumpets, no cameras, just an old commander, battle-scarred and haunted, stepping off a ghost ship into the world he'd saved. Creed met him at the gate, grey now, leaning on a cane, but still smiling. "About time," he said. Reed grunted. "You look like hell." "I am hell," Creed replied. "But I'm alive, thanks to you." Reed didn't speak to crowds. He refused interviews. He denied medals. But one thing he did. He visited the graves. The Nightingale Memorial Park had been built near Earth's equator, on land once scorched by industrial war. Now it was quiet, green, lined with names carved into black stone. He walked it in silence, hand-brushing each panel. He found the name of the girl, the one in the hospital gown, Lena Maris, age 8. She'd become the symbol of everything lost. He sat by her name for an hour, and when he finally stood, he whispered, "We made them pay." But even as the words left his mouth, they tasted like ash. The world didn't need more wars, it needed witnesses. So Reed spent his final years as one. He spoke to cadets, not about glory, but about cost, about choosing the right wars, about walking away if you could, and burning it all down only when you had no other choice. The myth of Reed faded. The man stayed behind. A soldier, a ghost, a relic of a time when mercy died and vengeance spoke louder than any counsel. And long after he was gone, they still spoke his name, not with worship, but with warning. Don't wake the earth, don't strike its healers, don't test its silence. Because when the stars burned red, Reed Matheson made them regret ever learning our name.